morning, everybody. Today's story is called Cinderella Penguin, or The Little Glass Flipper. The author is Janet Perlman. There once was a young penguin named Cinderella who lived in a faraway land with her stepmother and two penguin stepsisters. Cinderella was a kind and gentle penguin, but her stepsisters were selfish and vain. Cinderella did all the chores. She even had to pick up after her stepsisters, while they never had anything to do. The sisters wore the finest of clothes and slept in large, cozy feather beds with silk sheets and big, fluffy pillows. Ooh, sounds fancy. But poor Cinderella wore nothing but worn-out tatters and rags, slept in the cold stone cellar up on a small shelf beside some old tin plates. She does not look comfy. One day it was announced that the Penguin Prince was giving a costume ball. The stepsisters and their mother received an invitation. Cinderella wanted to go too, but they just laughed at her. The prince would never want to meet a shabby cinder block like you. They are mean. For weeks the house was filled with talk of the ball. The sisters had costumes made from the finest fabric. They ate only the tiniest of meals so they could have tiny little waists, and they were always in front of the mirror, posing and practicing their curtsies. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. Cinderella rushed about ironing her stepsisters' costumes and helping them dress. Then, without even a thank you or a goodbye, the carriage swept the stepmother and stepsisters off to the ball. Cinderella burst into tears. She was so unhappy and so alone. Suddenly, in a glow of blue light, the great penguin fairy appeared before her. "Why are you crying, Cinderella? Do you want to go to the ball?" she asked. Cinderella blinked back tears. "Oh, yes, more than anything." "Then you shall," said the fairy. "First," said the fairy penguin, "you must fetch me a pumpkin from the garden." Cinderella didn't know how a pumpkin could help her get to the ball, but she quickly brought her best pumpkin that she could find. The fairy gave it a firm tap with her magic wand and turned it into a beautiful golden carriage. Then the great penguin fairy went into the kitchen and found 6 mice carrying a huge chunk of cheese. With a tap of her wand, they turned into a handsome team of 6 horses. She turned the cheese into a coachman in uniform. They all marched out the door and took their places, as if it were the most natural thing to do. "Now you can go to the ball. Are you happy, Cinderella?" said the fairy. "Oh, yes," said Cinderella, but then she sadly looked down at her old raggy clothes. Here's the mice with the cheese. And they're all ready to go, except for one thing. "Oh, I almost forgot," said the fairy, and with a tap of her wand, Cinderella Penguin's rags became a beautiful gown with gold trimming and real gold tiara. On her feet were a pair of glass flippers, the prettiest, most delicate that Cinderella had ever seen. These are glass flippers. "Now, one last thing," said the great penguin fairy. "The magic spell ends at midnight. The carriage will turn back into a pumpkin, the horses back to mice, the coachman into cheese, and you'll be dressed in rags again. So you must leave the ball before midnight." Cinderella promised to remember. Then, waving goodbye, she stepped into the carriage and rode off. Her heart was filled with joy. When Cinderella arrived at the palace, the ball was in full swing. She was welcomed with a fanfare of trumpets, and she marveled to see so many fine penguins wearing such beautiful clothing. Her stepmother and stepsisters didn't even notice her. They were too busy gobbling down snacks and party sandwiches at the buffet table. But the penguin prince noticed Cinderella at once. "Who is she?" he asked. "She's the most beautiful penguin I have ever seen." There's the prince. And can you find Cinderella penguin? She is walking in. Cinderella had never met as handsome and charming a penguin as the prince. From their first dance together, he never left her side. They whirled and twirled around the dance floor to the applause of the admiring crowd. "Who is the beautiful young penguin who has captured the prince's attention? What a handsome couple! How well they dance together," everyone said. Cinderella had never been so happy. She wished the night could last forever. Then, suddenly, she glanced up at the clock. In all the excitement, she had completely forgot about the fairy's warning. "Oh, I must go," she cried. "It's almost midnight." As she ran from the palace in such a hurry that one of her glass flippers fell off and was lying on the steps. And there she goes. As Cinderella rode away in her carriage, the prince called out, "Oh, please don't go." But she was gone. He picked up the glass flipper and said sadly, "Who was she? I don't even know her name." Should always ask their name. The next day it was announced that the prince would marry the penguin whose foot fit the little glass flipper. There was great excitement throughout the land. First, all the princes had tried it on, and then all the penguins of the court, but the flipper was always too small. The royal footman commanded to take the flipper from house to house. The stepsisters spent the whole day perfuming and powdering their feet. "Cinderella," said the stepmother, "your clothes are too raggy to be seen by the royal footman. Go downstairs and polish the silver until they leave." "Oh, please, I would like to try on the flipper too." Cinderella knew it would fit perfectly, but her stepsisters just laughed. But they looked down and noticed Cinderella's webbed feet. For the first time they noticed how small and delicate they were. Can you find Cinderella's feet? Next to the mop. A knock came at the door. "Quick, hide her," said the stepsisters. They grabbed Cinderella and threw her down the cellar steps, and they slammed the door. Poor Cinderella, she lay upside down with her foot caught tight in the door, unable to get free. Oh no. See her little foot sticking out? When the footman came in, the stepsisters pushed and shoved to be the first to try on the flipper. They were so intent on snatching the flipper from the other that it slipped from their grasp, flipped high up in the air, and landed right on Cinderella's foot. Everyone stared. It was a perfect fit. They do look surprised. As the footman opened the door to help Cinderella up, the great fairy penguin appeared. With a tap of her magic wand, she transformed Cinderella's tattered rags into the magnificent clothes that she wore at the ball. Cinderella was overjoyed. "Oh, thank you, fairy penguin. I thank you with all my heart." The stepsisters and stepmother's beaks dropped open wide. They stared at Cinderella, sputtering with amazement. "Oh, look! Oh my! It's her! Oh no! Oh dear, we've really put our foot in it." The Penguin Prince and Cinderella Penguin were married the very next day, and the wedding bells rang throughout the land. Never before could anyone remember such a joyous and happy wedding day. Cinderella and the prince truly loved each other, and they lived happily together forever after. Looks like they had a nice big family. I hope you enjoyed our Cinderella story today. Let's take a look. What was the name of our princess? Cinderella, Penguin. Was there stepsisters and stepmother who were not very nice? Yes. Was there a fairy godmother? There was a great fairy penguin. And did she have a beautiful gown to go to the ball? She did. Did she go to the ball in a pumpkin coach? She did. Did she have a glass slipper? Something close, something that rhymes with slipper. She had a glass flipper. And was there a handsome penguin prince? Of course. And did they live happily ever after with their penguin babies? They did.